Organ trafficking in the United States. What is organ trafficking? In the United States, organ trafficking is illegal. As of 2014, 123,175 people were waiting for an organ transplant. Only about 16,896 received a transplant. According to Organ Failure Solutions, Organs Watch, and ESO2, the typical organ donor is a male of about 28.9 years old with an annual income of $480, while the typical recipient is a male about 48.1 years old with an annual income of $53,000. About 18 people die every day while waiting for an organ transplant in the United States. The United Nations Global Initiative to Fight Human Trafficking, which organ trafficking is a part of, divides organ trafficking into 3 categories. The first is situations where the traffickers force or deceive persons into giving up their organ. The second, in which the most organ trafficking takes place, is where the persons agree to sell their organ, but they are either not paid at all or they're paid significantly less than the original. And the third category is for vulnerable people, including typically the poor and the homeless, are treated for an ailment, and during that treatment, their good organs are removed without the person's knowledge. In the U.S., there have been accusations, though no proof, of allowing patients on life support to die in order to remove the organs while the heart is still beating. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, every month, more than 2,000 new names are added to the national waiting list for organ transplants, which had 120,675 patients as of publication. Patients, many of whom go to China, India, or Pakistan for surgery, can pay up to $200,000 for a kidney to traffickers who harvest organs from vulnerable, desperate people, sometimes as little as $5,000. What fuels the organ trade? Shortage of organs for transplants. Demand for organs significantly outstrips the supply, and according to evidence collected by a worldwide network of doctors, traffickers are cashing in on a rising international demand for replacement kidneys driven by the increase in diabetes and other diseases. In 2014, 4,761 Americans died while waiting for a kidney transplant. Unable to obtain an organ at home, patients from rich countries might choose to travel to developing countries where they can buy organs and have it transplanted. In the developing country, organ brokers lure poor, uneducated individuals into selling their kidney through the promise of financial gain and a better future. Economic need drives most organ sellers, but in some cases, as in the Pakistani case, actual coercion is used. Such cross-border form of organ trafficking is known as transplant tourism. Some truths. Organ trafficking accounts for 5 to 10% of all kidney transplants worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, the illegal trade in kidneys has risen to such a level that an estimated 10,000 black market operations involving purchased human organs now take place annually. Estimates state that kidneys make up 75% of the global illicit trade in organs, and because of the rising rates of diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart problems, the demand for kidneys far outstrip the supply, and a lack of law enforcement in some countries and lack of laws in others make it easy for traffickers to offer financial incentives to poor people to part with their organs. Organ trafficking accounts for the 5 to 10% of all the kidney. And in Why Stop a Trade That May Save Someone's Life, libertarians raise that question constantly. Medical consensus prohibits organ trading. The poor will never receive the full amount paid if they were to sell their organs. Patients can be put at risk for surgical complications, infections, and organ rejection, and financial exploitation. They argue that legal organ sales are an expression of individual liberty that would allow many patients to regain their health while financially benefiting from low-income individuals. Yet, the existing medical consensus prohibits the organ trade based on the ethical view that human organs are not a commodity to be bought and sold. It is also argued that the trade is inherently exploitative, since it is the poor and vulnerable members of society who sell their organs to the rich. Furthermore, kidney sellers receive only a fraction of the $100,000 to $200,000 typically paid by patients and rarely experience the hoped-for economic improvement. Given the often inadequate pre-transplant evaluation and substandard medical treatment, commercial transplantations might yield poor health outcomes and put patients at higher risk for surgical complications. But if perhaps the United States and other countries were to legalize the sale of organs, the darker aspects of organ trafficking could be avoided. Hiding in plain sight. Often the procedures take place in major hospitals in major cities. Iran is the only country that it is legal to sell organs. It is estimated that $840 million to $1.7 billion annually is apprehended from black market trades to GFI. Organs are used for other purposes and not just transplants. And the organ trafficking trade involves a network of human traffickers, including mobile surgeons, brokers, patients, and staff. The organ, once obtained, trafficked organs can be transplanted to the recipients in the most reputable of hospitals in major cities throughout the world. But makeshift operating rooms and houses have often been the locations for such transplants. Shedding some light. In Colorado, the FBI is interviewing former employees of a funeral home whose owner runs a side business on the same premises selling human body parts. In a funeral home, there was an owner who had a side business of selling body parts, teeth, things like that came from the bodies. And for some that was either cremated or they had their bodies inside the casket. It was not known that these body parts were being sold. What can be done? The Declaration of Istanbul on organ trafficking and transplant tourism, physician advocacy, legislative laws, Project Protect, and encourage healthier lifestyles.